For the week of Thursday, June 4th, America has moved from one national crisis to another. But while COVID-19 struck the nation quickly and arguably caught many of us off guard, the uprisings happening across the country this week are the result of long-simmering and long-ignored issues of racial injustice. This new crisis is, in fact, an old one as well, one that many of us have seen coming for years, and many would also argue is long overdue. I'm Clay Aiken. This week, Politicon has assembled a very special panel of 4 returning guests for a discussion the nation desperately needs to hear. Shermichael Singleton is a political strategist and writer who worked on the presidential campaigns of Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney. Touré is a TV host and a writer for almost every major news publication in America. Amy Holmes is a conservative commentator and writer and host for Die Weltwoche. Michael Steele is the former lieutenant governor of the state of Maryland and the former chairman of the Republican National Committee. This week, a sober and thoughtful discussion, answers to some very difficult questions, and a real effort to find out how the heck are we going to get along. Thank you all for being here this week. It has been quite a heavy week, I think, for all of us to watch what's been going on in our country. And it's interesting because last week's episode, we had a discussion that only touched for a very brief moment on George Floyd, and it did turn into this really heated almost argument about race and the role of race in this current administration, and it kind of turned into such an argument that we made a very concerted effort this week to invite the 4 of you back, because we want to turn the volume down a little bit, and we want to listen to what this country probably has needed to listen to for 60 years and clearly not done a good job on. But the hope with this panel, and I think what I'm excited about tonight, is the fact that we are going to be able to kind of have a discussion that has disagreements without arguing, and really hopefully get to the meat of some of these issues that are facing us all right now. And instead of really even asking a question, I kind of just want to throw the conversation over to, we'll start with Touré. You're right in Brooklyn, and I think you were out earlier tonight, Wednesday night, protesting. And just give us an idea of what's going on in New York right now, and why you were saying it's so important for you to be able to be a part of what's happening in your city.
Yeah, there's protests going on all over New York. I was at the Barclays Center. There weren't that many people there at 6 p.m. when I got there, and then a huge group came up that had been marching up from Bay Ridge, and suddenly it was a couple thousand people. And I just saw on Twitter that they're now marching up Flatbush Avenue. And it has been incredibly cathartic for me to be part of these large crowds of people who are shutting down streets and marching and chanting and talking about Black Lives Matter and talking about and expressing their anger about what has happened, not just with George Floyd, but with policing in general in America, and having an outlet to express that. There is something really empowering in shutting down a street, and being with thousands of other people and doing that. And I've been out every day since Friday, and before I went out, I had a whole conversation myself about the risk of getting corona. I haven't been around a group of people in several months, and I said, this moment is too important to stay home. Even the moments when I have been afraid of police violence, which has been much more of a fear, which has been much more of a reality, much more of a possibility than violence from any other form or direction. I still had to stay as long as I could, because it's so important to lend our voices. We need an entirely new conversation with the police, and it does not include kneeling with them. That gesture is disgusting and empty, especially in a moment when we are protesting against a cop killing somebody with their knee. We don't need to be holding hands with them. We need a new contract that polices police behavior, that sets standards on the use of force, that outlaws chokeholds, that creates a duty to intervene when officers see other officers going too far, breaking law, being over-aggressive. These sorts of controls on police behavior is what we really need, and not some sort of kumbaya, we all need to understand each other.
Well, I definitely want to get to some of those specifics too. But Amy, you're in New York also. What has it been like to be in New York this week? And what has, I mean, this has just been a really heavy week. What has it felt like for you?
It certainly has. The last time we spoke a month ago, we were discussing how New York was quiet as a tomb. Well, now it's cacophony, and I live in Midtown, not far from where the looting was going on at Herald Square. And Monday night, I had my window open, trying to get some fresh air in my apartment. And it was cacophony. Sirens, fire trucks, helicopters, hours and hours and hours. And it felt like, a city under siege. Fortunately, there were no sounds of bullets or, people yelling, people in distress. But it was surreal, a very surreal feeling. Something that I have found to be cathartic is going on social media, on Twitter, and having conversations with people there. And, I'll confess, most of my Twitter followers tend to be conservative leaning. And it's been really heartening for me, actually, to see the solidarity and unanimity of opinion about the tragedy that befell George Floyd, the behavior of those police officers, and the problem of police brutality directed at members of the African American community. And it seems that this is a moment where, people are willing to listen, to look. I think George Floyd's death, his murder, being on video and 8 minutes long, was so powerful that people could not look away. And it's not a partisan issue. It's not left versus right. It's about humanity and what, the right thing to do, which also means looking deeper at the problem of police brutality against African Americans and what can be done to try to stop that. I mean, Touré mentioned a number of things. You can look at libertarians who have been, injecting some of their own policy prescriptions, one of them being the issue of qualified immunity. And this makes it nearly impossible for victims of police brutality to sue police officers. And interestingly enough, Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas, you could say on the far right, and Sonia Sotomayor on the far left, they both oppose qualified immunity as having no historical basis, no basis in the Constitution, something that needs to be revisited, and as another tool of trying to stop police brutality.
Hey, I'm Clay Aiken. To hear the full episode, subscribe to This Politicon podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to pods. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. Go to Politicon.com, follow @Politicon on social media, and listen to a new pod episode of How the Heck every Thursday.